with the high yield, big production, and high quality of this year's crop, maybe, just maybe, it reduces the risk that we do get some of those surprises. Thanks for joining me on the Comstock channel. I'm Senior Analyst Brian Grete, and we knew that the U.S. corn crop was record large this year in terms of both production and yield. What we didn't know was the quality of the crop, and now we have a little bit better insight on that thanks to the U.S. Grain and Bioproducts Council, which does a harvest quality survey every year and tests corn across the United States. And it turns out that not only did we have record yields this year, but we had very strong quality as well. The test weights were high. The percentage of corn graded number 1 and number 2, which is important on the export side of things, obviously, was high as well. There's exceptionally low levels of broken corn and foreign material, and that comes into play both in the storage and the export of corn, and so that is a high rating as well. Strong physical integrity with this year's crop, low mycotoxin levels, and it had normal chemical composition. And I'll take you through all the results from this survey, harvest results survey, and show you the details. The bottom line is this year's crop is not only high in yield, but also high in quality. The survey started off with test weights, and as you can see here, they came in at an average of 58.6. And while that was down from last year's 58.9 pounds, it is equal to the 5-year average. And really last year's crop pushed up that 5-year average. As you can see, this is one of the stronger ones that we've seen in recent time from a test weight perspective. And so that matters. The whole debate out there about whether test weight matters or not, it absolutely does, and on varying degrees. But this year's crop had a high test weight, and that will play forward in terms of how the crop is gauged from a production standpoint. The amount of corn that graded number 1 is down just a little bit from where it has been the past couple of years, but the number 2 grading is exceptionally high, and it comes in at almost 98%. And so number 1 and number 2 grade corn, obviously pretty important on the export side of things, is a very high number. And so the crop has export appeal when it comes to our product versus the rest of the world. And so the stronger this number is, the more appealing it is to a foreign buyer, price aside. But from a quality standpoint, this year's crop was rated really high from that perspective. Broken corn and foreign matter percentage, as you can see here, exceptionally low and well below what it has been any of the past 5 years, and less than half of what the 5-year average is. And so that comes into play not only on the export side of things, but also on the storage side. We'll just store better. And as a result, another indicator of the high quality of this year's crop. So when you take the broken corn and foreign material into play, and then you add in the mycotoxin levels, this year's crop, the total damage on this year's crop was just a little bit above what the 5-year average was, but still a low number, and isn't going to be a concern as we move forward. I think that the one takeaway as I read through this survey report was the low mycotoxin levels. And we'd heard about some reports in some areas this year where they had elevated levels. Farmers struggling, couldn't sell their corn because of that, and couldn't even give it away because of the number of supplies that are out there. So feedlots weren't even willing to take it and blend it and that type of stuff. So those are some horror stories, but based on these results, they are limited in terms of both number and scope. And so this year's crop had a good aggregate score from the total damage perspective. Now, when we get into the composition of the corn, I think one of the things that we look at is how it will use. So a bushel of corn isn't always a bushel of corn from a usage perspective. And so we look at it from two components, both the biofuel side, so how ethanol looks at it, and that would be primarily the starch component. And as you can see, the starch component this year was very high, well above the 5-year average, and above year ago, and especially above the 2 previous years from that, and just a high starch level within this year's crop. And so from a biofuels perspective, ethanol plants aren't going to have to grind as much to get the equivalency of a true bushel. And so that is important. Now, from the feed perspective, and that's the other side of things, we did see that protein matter was down a little bit from the 5-year average and from a year ago, and especially down from 2 years ago. And also the oil side was down as well, down from where it was in 2024 and also the 5-year average there. And so while the processing side of things with the starch levels indicates that we will see better quality corn on that front, the feeding side, so the feed industry, may have to grind a few more bushels to get the equivalency because of the lower protein and oil levels within the crop. So that is a component that we'll watch, the feed and residual usage category, as we move forward through the 25-26 marketing year. But I don't think, and I'll get to this later in my analysis, I don't think that we're going to see a whole lot of surprises when it comes to the quarterly grain stocks reports from usage that was unexpected or bushels that disappeared, so to speak, where we didn't know where they went. We didn't get the October crop production report from USDA this year because of the government shutdown, and as a result, there was a gap in that data there. We skipped forward to November, and what we saw was that the yield didn't come down nearly as much as some anticipated it would, and pretty much was in line with the historical norms. And so this data here kind of fills some of that gap on what we didn't have from the objective field data and from USDA. And you kind of have to draw some conclusions as you read through that and look through the objective field data. But this gives us a better picture in terms of not only, that the yield was strong, but also that the quality of the crop was strong. And that's an important component, I think, as we look forward to January. And so when we get the final estimate from USDA in January, the expectation is that we will see yield slip. But I think this data, unless my analysis is completely wrong, will point to not only a high yielding crop, but a quality crop. And part of the component of the January survey from USDA is how the crop stores, because it will be virtually all harvested by that point in time. And so what did we take out of the field and put into the bin, and how much do we have left in the bin at that point in time? Now, USDA also releases a December 1 grain stocks report at the same time in January. And so that all comes into play, and those two reports kind of work together. But I don't think that there will be significant surprises on the yield side of things, production side, or on the December 1 stocks. And then because of the high quality, this crop is probably going to use pretty well as we move through the 25-26 marketing year. What that does is those quarterly grain stocks reports. So we get the December 1 number, then we also get in March and June, and then finally in September, and that becomes final ending stocks for the 25-26 marketing year. We've seen that those reports historically have been wide misses by the analysts in the industry. There have been major surprises to the tune of multiple hundreds of millions of bushels, either too high or too low with their estimates going into those reports. And so I think that with the high yield, big production, and high quality of this year's crop, maybe, just maybe, it reduces the risk that we do get some of those surprises, especially on the downside. I don't think that there will be as many lost bushels this year, so to speak, because a bushel of corn is probably going to use about what is a normal level, and maybe even a little bit above that normal level. So we could see the disappearance as we move through these quarterly reports not quite live up to some of the expectations, would be my analysis of the whole thing, that a bushel of corn this year is probably equal to, or maybe even a little bit greater than, what a normal bushel of corn would be. So we'll see. Yet to be seen as we move into the January final estimate and through those quarterly grain stocks reports in terms of what the actual crop size was and how it uses through the 25-26 marketing year. For Comstock, I'm Analyst Brian Grete.
Futures trading involves risk. The risk of loss in trading futures and/or options is substantial, and each investor and/or trader must consider whether this is a suitable investment. Past performance is not indicative of future results.